What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Kenny, and today I'm here with my good friend Stefan.
Hey everyone.
How are you doing tonight, Stefan?
Glorious.
Good. Before we get into this, just a reminder to subscribe if you feel like it, if you enjoy our stuff. Also, we have a Patreon set up for $3 a month, which gives you access to our Patreon-only Discord and extra content, and also content early.
Yeah, get the show a couple days early.
Yeah.
Tell everyone you know.
For only a whole $2.99 a month.
Now that's a steal.
That's a steal. And also like the video if you want to.
Yeah. Please. We're counting on you. Tell your stepmom about this podcast.
We need all the help from all the stepmoms.
That's right. We appreciate all of them.
So our story starts in Rochester, New York. Between 1971 and 1973, 3 young girls were raped and murdered. The killer was never officially caught, but it's been 50 years since these horrible crimes shook the city. Do we know anything about the killer? Do we have any idea who could have committed these murders? This story is interesting because there are a lot of similarities between all 3 murders, and a lot of people have really been drawn to these similarities. All 3 girls' first and last names started with the same letter: Carmen Colon, Wanda Walkowitz, and Michelle Mainza. All 3 were from Catholic families, and all 3 were from poor neighborhoods, and they all struggled with school as well. The way they were killed was almost identical in every case, which we'll get into. And yeah, I think I said all the names correct. So we're good.
Hey, I have my name, two letters of the same. Does that make sense? I could have been one of these people is what I'm trying to say. Could have been any of us.
You're an adult male, so probably not.
Well, all right, fair enough. Today we begin this story on November 16th, 1971. The weather was starting to turn cold in New York, and for most people driving down Highway 490 West, it was a normal day. This changed when drivers were distracted by a young girl who was wearing only a shirt and running down the side of the highway, waving her arms and trying to get someone to stop for her. There was a car coming for her. It was going in reverse, and a man grabbed her, put her back in the car, and drove away. 38 people would witness this incident, and none of them would stop to help in the moment. The young girl's name was Carmen Colon. Carmen was from Puerto Rico, but she had moved to Rochester at a young age. She was 10 years old and was living with her grandparents at the time. Before this, she had been living between her mom's house, and after her dad left, she went to her grandparents' house. Her uncle Miguel was also living at her mom's house. Carmen would suffer from really bad night terrors throughout the night, getting so bad that she would fall out of the bed sometimes. On the day that motorists would see Carmen running down the highway, her grandmother had sent her to the pharmacy to pick up a prescription for her grandmother. And we've seen different sources say she was going there for her grandmother, for her mother.
Yeah, she was going there to pick up a prescription for her grandfather, but I'm like 99% sure that she was sent by her grandmother. I've just seen like 3 or 4 different sources stating either her mother or grandmother. Again, pretty sure it's grandmother.
And this was around 4:20 in the afternoon.
When Carmen got into the drugstore, she was told by the pharmacist that the order had not been processed. And actually, the pharmacist told her that it would be about 30 minutes until it was done, if he put it in right then. She then informed the store owner that she had to go in a real hurry, stating, "I gotta go, I gotta go." After this, she was seen getting into a car that parked near the pharmacy. This was about 50 minutes before she was observed running down the highway. Her mother would report her missing around 7:50 that night. Her mother had also sent family members out looking for her, but nothing could be found. When I say family members, it was mostly like her brothers and just, Carmen's aunts and uncles, that sort of thing. And like we said, originally no one helped Carmen when she was running down the highway, and no one reported seeing anything suspicious. But 2 days after she was last seen, her body was found by 2 teenagers, partially undressed in a gully, which was near Interstate 490. She was found 12 miles from the last place she was seen alive. The autopsy showed that she had been raped and her skull had been fractured, and her cause of death was most likely strangulation. And we know this now that she was strangled from the front with the suspect's hands, not with some type of ligament or anything like that. And the thing about it, man, it's kind of messed up that no one saw, but
40 people saw this.
Almost, yeah.
No one did anything.
and it kind of raises the question, like, why exactly is that? It's something called the bystander effect, right? Whenever you think that someone else is going to get to it, someone else is going to do it, and you're kind of scared to do something. But also maybe they didn't think of it as being suspicious.
Right.
I mean, she was nude from the waist down, so that's pretty suspicious to me. And it's easy for everyone, because if you ask 100 people, I guarantee you that 100 of those people are going to say I would stop.
Of course.
But I mean, 38 people didn't stop, so I mean,
Would you stop?
I would stop, dude.
Whatever.
Yes, I would stop.
I believe you.
When her body was found, the public was enraged that no one on the highway had reported seeing this, and that no one had stopped it from happening. 2 New York newspapers, as well as private donators, would put up a reward of $6,000 to anyone that would help solve this case. Nothing that anyone would give the police would come up with anything worthwhile.
17 months would go by before our next victim comes into the story. Her name was Wanda Walkowitz, and she was an 11-year-old that would disappear from Rochester on April 2nd, 1973. Wanda's dad died at a young age and left his wife and daughters by themselves. They would eventually end up in a small apartment, and because of depression, Wanda's mother turned to alcohol. She became an alcoholic, and Wanda and her sister would have to look after themselves a bit more than you should at that age. She was sent to the grocery store by her mother on April 2nd to buy a bunch of groceries that were needed. Wanda would leave the store at around 5:15 in the afternoon, and according to the store owner, she would not return home. Her mom sent her younger sister to look for her, which is just insane. Okay, one daughter's missing, send out the next one.
Yeah, and also the younger one. It's like, okay, she's already young. Like, what are we doing here?
Crazy.
Yeah.
And anyway, her mother would report her missing around 8 that night.
Yeah. So it's pretty crazy, man. It seems like maybe her mom just didn't want to believe what was happening and didn't want to take responsibility at first.
Lots of good parenting happening, for sure.
Yeah, who knows? But it was bad. So an eyewitness would say that she saw Wanda walking home, and at one point she was observed standing next to the driver's side of a big brown car talking with the driver. 3 classmates of Wanda's had also seen her, as well as other people in the area. They all said that she was struggling to carry the bag of groceries as it was too big for her. The classmates also said that they saw her leaning on a fence to help with the groceries, basically. Just, help. The fence was helping her hold up the groceries. And at that point, they saw a brown car come up to her. Another witness at a later time would come forward and say that she had seen a man force a red-haired girl into a Dodge Dart on Cockney Avenue, the same street that Wanda had been walking down. This happened around the same time Wanda had been walking home. So basically, later it would be confirmed that the witness who saw this, the man forcing the redheaded girl into a Dodge Dart, obviously at the time she didn't know who it was, but later would be confirmed that it was Wanda. And the times for when she would have went missing and when she saw that happen, also the times when everyone else saw her walking down the street and holding the grocery bag up, it would all just sort of it would make sense with one another.
The day after Wanda went missing, a state trooper found her body at 10 a.m. near an access road to State Route 104 in Webster, which was 7 miles away from Rochester. Wanda's autopsy showed that, similar to Carmen, she had been raped and strangled to death. Several strands of white cat fur were also found on Wanda's body, and the family didn't own a cat. This will come back later in the story. The autopsy also showed that within 2 hours of her murder, she had eaten custard, and this is something she couldn't have gotten at the store, so it seems like the killer probably lured Wanda with the custard. The Rochester Police Department would initially deny that they believed there was any connection between Carmen's murder and Wanda's, but the local community would not believe that.
Yeah, the local community definitely thought that there was a connection between the two. Yeah.
Over 200 tips in total would come in from Wanda's disappearance, but nothing would ever come from it. The Saturday before Wanda went missing, 2 young girls told police that a man had attempted to get them into his car, which was a Ford LTD.
So 7 months would pass while the odds of the police finding Wanda's and Carmen's killer got slimmer and slimmer. On November 26, 1973, a witness would notice a brown car traveling at a high rate of speed on Ackerman Street. The witness would also notice a young girl sitting in the passenger seat of that car, and she was crying. The witness would later recognize the young girl as Michelle Manza, a girl who was reported missing that same day. And at this point, this is after Carmen's death and Wanda's death, and so the whole community is now at this point keeping their daughters, especially their daughters, but all of their children, very close to them, not letting them do as much because they're really worried that something's happening. Obviously they're worried about the same thing that happened to Wanda and Carmen happening to their kids, but especially their daughters. It makes sense. And, for the most part, Michelle's mother was doing exactly the same thing. She was very protective. The other two parents, for Wanda and Carmen, seemed like they lacked it a little bit.
You could probably make a case for they were a little lackadaisical.
Yeah. But Michelle's mother was not like that. But on this day, Michelle's mother would usually pick up Michelle from school as well as her siblings. But on this day, Michelle wasn't there. And when her mother got there and she wasn't there at her usual time, the school would tell her mother that Michelle was being kept after school in detention for some type of altercation between her and her classmates. And Michelle she was really awkward and kind of shy, and she was kind of low overweight, and so she was subject to bullying that was pretty bad in school. So that day, I was kind of assuming that there was a bullying incident, and maybe they had gotten into an altercation. And you know how schools are. They'll just hand out detentions to anyone involved.
Sure.
So it seemed like that's pretty much what happened. Her mother would end up making the decision to go ahead and leave and let Michelle walk home. While Michelle was walking home, she decided that she was going to stop by a grocery store in a plaza where her mom had left her purse there a few days before. Michelle thought she would help out her mom by getting her purse for her.
Some of Michelle's classmates saw her walking home after she was released from school. And shortly after they saw her is when the witness saw inside of the brown car. Hours later, a man saw a similarly described car parked on the side of Route 250. The car had a flat tire, and the man stopped to see if he could help at all. He saw a young girl who was in the car and who he would later identify as Michelle. She was alongside a man who was changing the tire. And when the witness pulled up to help, the man actually pulled the young girl by the wrist and hid her behind him, which I wouldn't imagine would work at all. So strange. So basically, he's just acting strange.
Yeah.
And at the same time he did this, he's sort of like trying to position himself in front of the license plate so no one could get it. And again, another weirdo red flag. But the man who had stopped to help drove away after being intimidated. Another witness would come forward and say that they had seen the young girl with the description of Michelle at a fast food restaurant with a man. The man had bought her a cheeseburger meal, and they said that the young girl had been crying in the car.
2 days after Michelle went missing, her body would be found in a ditch in Macedon, New York. This was about 15 miles away from where she went missing. She'd been beaten, raped, and strangled to death in a similar fashion to Carmen and Wanda's killings. Remember the white cat fur that was found on Wanda's clothes? Michelle was fully clothed when she was found, and the same white cat fur was found on her clothing as well. They would also find a semen sample on her body, and it indicated that she had been raped by only one individual. I said only as if that's a good thing, but that's what the semen sample showed, just one individual. They also found remains of cheeseburger and onions in her stomach, which they had estimated had been eaten about an hour before she was killed. And that lines up with the witness that had seen her at the fast food joints. And at the fast food joint, the witness had seen her in the car while just a guy, the suspect that we know of now, went into the restaurant to actually buy the food. So,
And that lines up too, right? If you're doing something like that, you're not going to take your victim in a store. You're probably just going to go in, get the
probably.
food.
Probably not. So, yeah, like all three of these murders are very similar. They were all raped and then strangled to death in the same general area. They were all around the same age and came from similar backgrounds. And at this point, unlike what we had stated earlier, the police believe that all three of these murders are linked. There are a couple things that separate Wanda and Michelle's death from Carmen's death. All three were strangled, but Wanda and Michelle were strangled from behind with some type of ligature, while Carmen was strangled from the front with the suspect's hands, which makes it a lot more personal. Both Wanda and Michelle had been fed before they were killed, and both of them had white cat fur found on their clothing, and neither one of them had a white cat. Over time, the link between Carmen's murder and Wanda and Michelle's murder would become thin because of these reasons. Police had a main suspect in Carmen's murder that might not fit into the other two's, and that was her uncle Miguel.
When Carmen's parents split up, her father's brother, Miguel, was there to pick up the pieces. He would move into the house and formed a relationship with Carmen's mother. At the time of Carmen's death, she was living with her grandparents, and typically her grandfather would walk to the store with Carmen to get his prescription. But this time, Carmen had convinced them to let her go alone. Weeks before Carmen's death, her uncle had purchased a car that was similar in description to the car that was seen reversing on Interstate 490. Investigators would search the car and find inside that it had been detailed clean and the trunk had been cleaned with some type of strong cleaning solution. The car dealership would state that this is not done by them prior to the sale of the car, and 2 days after the death of Carmen, Miguel told a friend that he was leaving Rochester because he had done something wrong. Not sketchy at all. Mm-hmm. He would go to Puerto Rico 4 days later. Crazy. Investigators were able to track him down and have him extradited back to New York. He was unable to come up with an alibi, but because no physical evidence could ever be found, he was let go. He was the strongest suspect in Carmen's death, but he was never charged for it. In 1999, he shot his wife and his brother during a domestic violence dispute. They survive, but Miguel would later kill himself.
It was actually 1991, but...
What did I say, 95?
99.
99. I can't read. Reading's hard.
It's okay, though. But yeah, and what's crazy is it's crazy that they followed him all the way to Puerto Rico, and he was hiding out in like the jungle, and they were going in. They didn't just find him right away. They spent time in Puerto Rico trying to find Miguel to extradite him back, just so they could question them. It's not like they were going to necessarily arrest him, I don't believe. And then after all of that, even with all the circumstantial evidence, just because there was no actual physical evidence linking the two to the crime, not the two, but linking Miguel to Carmen's death, they couldn't actually arrest him. It was pretty weird.
Yeah, he went out of his way to say that he was leaving because he had done something wrong.
To a friend, yeah. I mean,
it's just so strange. I mean, and to Puerto Rico.
Yeah. Obviously, look, I'm not going to say obviously, but probably he seems like, in my opinion, I mean, in most people's opinions,
pretty strong.
Pretty strong. And there was not really, unless you say that he just went off on a killing spree. I mean, not really a killing spree, but, he decided to kill two others. But they were in different ways. The only thing that kind of links, he had a big brown car as well. That he, like you said, he just bought. And in the other two, in Wanda and Michelle's deaths, they also were seen with the big brown car. But I mean, It's the 70s. There were a lot of brown cars, and cars were big, so.
Yeah, definitely. Still sketchy.
Another suspect in this case is 25-year-old Dennis Termini. He would be known as the garage rapist. He raped at least 14 women and teenage girls between 1971 and 1973, the same time as the Alphabet murders. He also lived in close proximity to the area that Michelle was last seen alive. A little over a month after the death of Michelle, the last Alphabet victim, Dennis would attempt to abduct 2 teenage women. One was able to get away when she wouldn't stop screaming for help, and when Dennis tried to abduct the second victim, the police were alerted by a neighbor witness, and he was followed by the police, and he would end up killing himself before he was caught. And remember the white cat fur found on Michelle and Wanda's clothing? White cat fur was also found inside the car of Dennis. And yeah, that car also fit the description of the car that was seen during the abductions of Wanda and Michelle. So, that's pretty suspicious to me.
Pretty sus indeed. Kenneth Bianchi, with his cousin Angelo, committed the Hillside Strangler murders in Los Angeles and was also a suspect. The Hillside Strangler murders would happen 6 to 8 years after the Alphabet murders on the other side of the country, but he was still a suspect, and he had always denied this.
Yeah, he had murdered a bunch of women, or he and his cousin. They were the Hillside Stranglers, so they were very well known. It's an episode I haven't looked it up in a while, but we might do an episode on it later at some point. It's pretty interesting. But yeah, he's already in prison with life sentences for these other murders, and he's just like, no, we did not do this, and probably because he's being accused of killing children, so it's a lot different.
Another suspect was Joseph Naso. He lived in Rochester at the time and would go back and forth between New York and California. In 2011, he was arrested for the murders of 4 prostitutes in California. The women he murdered in California also shared a major thing in common with the Alphabet killings. They also had the double initials. The first letter of the first and last name, were similar in all 4 of the killings, and one of them was also named Carmen Colon.
Which is
strange.
Insane, man. So all 4 of the women that Joseph had killed, though, they all had double initials, just like the 3 victims in the Alphabet killing, like you just said. But one of them was named Carmen Colon.
Had the exact same
name. That's absolutely insane.
What are the odds of that?
Seriously.
In 2013, he was sentenced to death for those murders. Through DNA testing, they were able to rule out Joseph as the person who raped Wanda before she was killed.
Yeah, and like we said, Wanda had semen from Wanda's body, but I can't find anything about any type of semen samples found on Michelle and Carmen's bodies. So yeah, I don't know if they were lost or what happened with those, but I can't find any information about those.
So interesting. I know usually at the end we give our takes on what we think happened. What do you think? Do you think all these were related?
Okay, so here's the thing. I don't think that Carmen's murder was related to Wanda's and Michelle's, right? I don't really think that, because I'm pretty sure Miguel killed Carmen.
Yeah.
But so unless he killed the other 2 as well, but they were different. Wanda and Michelle's murders were very, very connected. We can basically say that the same person for sure killed Michelle and Wanda. And they were so similar, and they were different than Carmen's. So I don't believe all 3 of them are linked. And also, if you search this up, a lot of people think it was Joseph Naso, but I don't think that. It's possible. The thing about it, though, is he lived there during the time. Obviously, he wants to kill, but he killed 4 adult women in California. And these are 3 children. And I know this sounds strange, but it doesn't really fit that he would go from killing children to killing adults. It just doesn't happen like that very often. And also, he definitely didn't rape Wanda, because it was, they tested the DNA, and it's not they determined that was not him. So it was weird to me when I was searching this up. A lot of people were like, it was definitely Joseph, and I'm sure people in the comments will say that. I personally don't think that was it. I think Dennis Termini has a better chance of it being him. I mean, the white cat fur, everything kind of matched. There's definitely some stuff we may have missed in this as well. So maybe if you have any extra information that you can throw in, let us know. But what do you think?
I don't know what I think for sure. I think there was 2 different killers for sure, if not 3. But yeah, I sort of agree with you. It kind of sucks there isn't more evidence to sort of go on. You know, you want scumbags like that to be busted. But yeah, I think it was definitely more than one person. And poor girls, man, so sad.
Yeah, this is probably going to be one of the last cases for a while we'll do that involve children. I just did one without you. It was Mac Ray Edwards in California, and that one was sad. But also in general, we probably won't do too many episodes involving kids very often. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I don't think that we missed too much. Maybe a little bit. Let us know if we did. We appreciate you listening to this. Again, subscribe if you want to.
And be excellent to each other.
Yes. And we have a Patreon. I love you.
Later.